Good morning, brothers and sisters. This is a Tuesday, and I hope you're looking forward to all God's going to do in your life today. And our Bible reading plan here at First Baptist for our devotion today, we are in chapter 9 of 2 Corinthians. And I hope you've already read the chapter and written in your journal what God said to you. After I read and reflected on this, one verse stood out to me in particular, and what I wrote at the top of my journal, the page for this day, is the word generosity. Because Paul tells the Corinthians in chapter 9 that when he was in Macedonia, Thessalonica, and the other churches in that area, he had bragged on the Corinthians because previously they had made a commitment, a generous commitment, if you will, to give to the relief offering he was collecting from all the churches for the believers in Jerusalem. We talked about that a little bit yesterday and how he had a group of representatives from the church traveling together with the offering to maintain integrity. And so when he was raising the money in Macedonia, he used the Corinthians' commitment to give as an example and an encouragement to the Macedonians. And the Macedonians were much poorer, not as well off as the believers in Corinth, but they had given very, very generously. And so he's sending this letter to the Corinthians as he sends this team on down, knowing that he will follow later, and when he gets there, the offering will be collected. And so he's encouraging them to make certain they're ready so that when he shows up, he doesn't have to say anything. The offering's already collected. They've kept their word because he doesn't want anybody to be embarrassed. He's bragged on them, and so if they don't follow through, they will look bad. But he will look bad. He doesn't want to be embarrassed. He doesn't want them to be embarrassed. He doesn't want any of the people who are traveling in that group to maintain integrity with the offering to think, well, Paul said these Corinthians were really generous, but man, they're a bunch of tightwads, or they got a negative attitude. He just said, hey, follow through, and it'll honor God, and everything will go really, really well. Now, in that context, the verse that really jumped out at me and spoke to my heart is verse 5. So let's look at verse 5 for just a moment. He says in chapter 9, verse 5, and I'm reading from the New American Standard Translation. So I thought it necessary to urge the brethren that they would go on ahead to you. So that group of men went ahead of Paul, and they're there in Corinth now with this letter. 2 Corinthians rather. And arrange beforehand, before Paul got there, your previously promised bountiful gift. You had made the promise, the commitment. Now I'm sending these guys to work with you to make sure you got it ready. So when I show up, you're ready. So that the same would be ready as a bountiful gift, so you'll be ready, and here's the part that spoke to my heart, not affected by covetousness. Not affected by covetousness. One of the things that keeps people from being truly generous financially, that keeps people from tithing or even sacrificially giving beyond a tithe, is covetousness. Wanting something. And it could be an item, an object, something you buy. It could be an experience, travel. And some of us are so covetous of having these things, having these experiences, that God tends to always get the leftovers if he gets anything at all. People who are covetous tend to either not give or give very inconsistently or give just a little bit and think they're being generous when they just give a little bit, or when they give, resent it, especially if it's more than just a tip. They give grudgingly, whereas generous people give with joy and gladness, and they don't begrudge it. Being covetous means that I have a focus on me, what I want, what I enjoy, rather than having joy in growing the kingdom of God. joy in seeing lives changed and transformed, building the church up spiritually and otherwise. And having things is not a sin, and having experience is not a sin unless you covet those so much they become your idols. And you give to those idols, not God. That's a sin. And each of us need to examine ourselves as to generosity versus covetousness. And is my wanting things and wanting experiences getting in the way of my being generous when it comes to the kingdom of God and the cause of Christ? Do I think about and give to God and His work first, or does He get the leftovers? And your answer to that one question says a lot. I'll see you tomorrow.